Level 1. No motivation at all. This is the bottom of the ladder, and most people have lived here. The textbook is open, the laptop is charged, the Notes app is ready, and somehow, 45 minutes later, the only thing that happened is 6 short-form videos about a dog learning to skateboard. At this level, studying feels physically impossible. Not difficult, impossible. The way lifting a car feels impossible. The brain registers the task, calculates the effort required, and quietly redirects attention to anything that delivers faster dopamine. Social media, snacks, reorganizing a desk that was already clean. The body is at the desk, but the mind checked out before the first sentence. The hallmark of Level 1 is the restart loop. You close the distraction, return to the page, read 2 lines, and drift again. Each restart feels heavier than the last. By the 5th cycle, you convince yourself the day is already wasted and tomorrow will be different. It never is. What keeps people here is a misunderstanding. They believe motivation is a feeling that arrives before work begins, like a bus you wait for. At this level, the bus never comes, and so the cycle repeats. Plan, fail, feel bad, plan again, until the gap between where they are and where they should be becomes terrifying rather than motivating. Interestingly, most people do eventually leave Level 1, but the force that moves them is not inspiration. It is a much uglier engine. Level 2. Guilt-driven motivation. This is where studying happens, but only because not studying feels worse. The engine is not excitement. It is shame, a missed deadline, a disappointed look, a group chat where everyone else is further ahead. The pain of falling behind finally outweighs the pain of opening the textbook. At Level 2, students sit down and grind, but every session feels like punishment. There is no curiosity, no interest, no satisfaction, just the dull relief of shrinking a to-do list before the anxiety becomes unbearable. Productivity at this level is real but fragile. It spikes right before exams, crashes right after them, and leaves almost nothing in long-term memory. Studies on cortisol and learning show that stress-driven study sessions encode information weakly. The material goes in just long enough to survive the test, then evaporates. The limitation here is sustainability. Guilt is a powerful starter, but a terrible fuel source. Run on it long enough, and it produces burnout, resentment toward the subject, and a deep belief that studying is something you endure, not something you do. Most students cycle between Level 1 and Level 2 for years, never realizing there is a third gear. Level 3. External reward motivation. This is the first level where studying feels somewhat manageable, because now there is a clear transaction. Study hard, get the grade. Get the grade, unlock the opportunity. Get the opportunity. Access the life. At Level 3, the motivation source shifts from avoiding pain to chasing a specific outcome. A GPA target, a scholarship, admission into a competitive program, a parent's approval, a job offer with a number attached to it. The goal is external, visible, and measurable, and that clarity makes it easier to sit down and work. Students at this level often build real systems, flashcard decks, timed sessions, study schedules color-coded by subject. The discipline looks impressive from the outside, and the results usually match. But there is a ceiling built into this level. External rewards only motivate as long as they feel achievable and desirable. The moment a student realizes the grade will not change the outcome, or the scholarship is already lost, or the parent will never actually be satisfied, the entire system collapses. The motivation was never about the material. It was about the prize behind the material. Remove the prize, and the engine shuts off instantly. People at level 3 study hard, but remember surprisingly little after the exam. Ask them 6 months later to explain a concept they scored 90% on, and the answer is often a blank stare. The knowledge was a vehicle, not a destination. And vehicles get abandoned once the trip is over. Level 4. Routine-based motivation. This is where things start to shift in a fundamental way. At level 4, motivation stops being a feeling and becomes a behavior. The student does not wait to feel motivated. They sit down at the same time, in the same place, and begin, regardless of how they feel. The breakthrough at this level is the discovery that action creates motivation, not the other way around. Research on behavioral activation confirms this. Beginning a task, even reluctantly, generates momentum. The brain releases small doses of dopamine as micro goals are completed. One page read, one problem solved, one paragraph written. Those tiny rewards compound, and within 15 minutes, the reluctance that was there at the start quietly disappears. Students at this level rely on structure over willpower. They use the Pomodoro method. They set up distraction-free environments. They batch similar subjects together. They do not trust their future selves to feel like studying, so they design systems that make studying the default action. The limitation is emotional flatness. Level 4 produces consistent output, but rarely produces passion. The student is reliable, but not excited. They can maintain a study habit for months, even years, but if you ask them whether they enjoy what they are learning, the honest answer is usually a shrug. Discipline is the engine here, and it works. But there is a level above this, where something else takes over, and the experience changes entirely. Level 5. Curiosity-driven motivation. This is the first level where studying stops feeling like work. At level 5, the student encounters a concept and feels a genuine pull to understand it deeper. Not because it will be on the test, but because the gap in their understanding bothers them. Psychologists call this epistemic curiosity, and it behaves differently from every motivation source below it. External rewards fade. Guilt loses its sting. Routines get stale. But curiosity regenerates. Each answer produces a new question, and each question pulls the learner further in. At this level, students start going beyond the syllabus. They read papers not on the reading list. They watch lectures from other universities. They explain concepts to friends not to show off, but because teaching forces them to find the holes in their own understanding. And those holes are fascinating, not frustrating. Memory at level 5 is dramatically stronger. Research on the curiosity effect shows that when a person is genuinely curious about a topic, their hippocampus becomes more active, and even unrelated information presented during a curious state gets remembered better. Curiosity does not just make learning more enjoyable, it makes the brain physically better at storing information. The limitation at this level is selectivity. Curiosity is powerful, but narrow. A level 5 student might lose 3 hours exploring quantum mechanics and then have zero interest in finishing a required essay on a topic that bores them. They can devour a textbook on a subject they chose and simultaneously procrastinate on one they did not. The motivation is real, but it does not distribute evenly across all subjects. There is a level where that unevenness disappears. Level 6. Identity-based motivation. At level 6, motivation is no longer tied to a specific subject, reward, or even curiosity about a particular question. It is tied to who the person believes they are. The internal narrative shifts from, "I need to study," to, "I am someone who learns." That distinction sounds small, but its consequences are enormous. A person driven by obligation can always negotiate their way out of a session. A person whose identity includes learning does not negotiate. The same way a person who identifies as a runner does not debate whether to run. It is just what they do. At this level, the student applies effort across subjects, even the ones they find dull, because abandoning a difficult topic would conflict with their self-image. They take notes in conversations. They read outside their field. They treat every environment as a classroom, not because someone told them to, but because filtering the world through learning is how their brain now operates. Research on identity-based habits shows that behavior change lasts longest when it is anchored to identity rather than outcomes. The student at level 6 does not set a goal to study 4 hours a day. They simply behave consistently with the person they believe they are, and 4 hours happens naturally. The limitation at this level is subtle. Identity-based learners can become rigid. They tie self-worth to intellectual performance, and a failure, a bad exam, a concept they cannot grasp, can feel like an identity crisis rather than a normal setback. There is one level above this, and it changes the experience of studying entirely. Level 7. Flow state motivation. This is as far as the ladder goes. At level 7, the act of studying becomes its own reward. Not the grade, not the identity, not even the curiosity. The experience itself. The student sits down and within minutes enters a state where time distorts, self-consciousness disappears, and the gap between effort and enjoyment closes to zero. Psychologists describe flow as the state where the challenge of a task perfectly matches the skill of the person attempting it. Too easy and the brain gets bored. Too hard and the brain gets anxious. But when the difficulty sits exactly at the edge of current ability, something clicks. Attention locks in. Distractions stop existing. Hours feel like minutes. Students who reach this level describe studying the way athletes describe competition or musicians describe performance. There is no friction. The work pulls them in rather than pushing them forward. They do not need alarms, schedules, or accountability partners. The material itself generates the energy to continue. The critical insight about level 7 is that it cannot be accessed directly. Flow is not a decision. It is a consequence. It requires the routine of level 4, the curiosity of level 5, and the identity of level 6 all working together. Skip any layer, and the state remains out of reach. There is no level above this. This is where studying stops being something a person does and becomes something a person experiences. Most people visit this state only a handful of times in their lives and remember each one vividly. The afternoon when 4 hours vanished and felt like 30 minutes. The night when a subject suddenly made complete sense and the understanding felt physical, like a lock turning inside the skull. The textbook is open. The mind is locked in. And for the first time on the entire ladder, nowhere else in the world sounds better than right here. And maybe that is what makes the next step easier. When the textbook is open and the mind is finally ready, getting stuck should not be the thing that breaks the state. TuitionGuruCool gives you a place to ask the question, get the concept explained simply, practice it, and keep moving before frustration turns into distraction. No waiting for the next class. No pretending you understood. No awkwardness in asking again. Just help at the exact moment curiosity is alive right now. If you want something that keeps learning moving instead of interrupting it, the link is in the description.